And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Frank Tomeno is our guest. Frank continues to write his history column for the Observer-Dispatch, and he is also the author of History Just for the Fun of It. Frank, we're talking about local newspapers, and those local newspapers that we mentioned, we didn't mention a lot of them, but the local newspapers that we were mentioning had some great writers for them. Oh. The one that jumps out at me from way back when is Dave Beadle.
Dave Beadle, yeah, Dave Beadle was with the, well, actually he was with the press and the OD, but most of his articles went in the Sunday paper. And as you know, he wrote several books up Old Forge Way. And I believe once you wrote a couple of columns tracing his footsteps up there.
Yeah, you got a good memory.
He was a great writer. Then he went to Albany with Gannett the Gannett office in Albany. Mm-hmm. Just a great writer. Another one was Paul Draheim, mm-hmm. who was from Herkimer and was a state editor, and he worked mostly for the press. But he wrote a history column way before I did, and I remember when, I think I told you this story before. He was with the morning paper and wrote a history column every Saturday, and really well done. And when I started my history column at the OD, 68, I said, gee, I wonder how he's going to feel about this. And he called me and he said, good luck. Anytime you need any help at all, let me know. I never forgot that. Great guy. Yep.
And he did an interesting thing with his history columns. He numbered them.
Yeah, I think when he reached 1,000, there was a story, he got a letter from the governor. I don't know who was governor, probably Governor Dewey. Yeah. But yeah, he numbered his column.
And he did, which I thought were fascinating, he did a lot of columns on how places got their names.
Yeah, he did quite a few columns on that. Also, I think it was in the 50s, every Saturday for just about the whole year, he had the histories of different churches in the valley and in Utica, mm-hmm. and the whole area. And I'm talking about long stories with a lot of detail, which are invaluable today. You know, I've got quite a few of them. And so if you're interested in any kind of church, any denomination, it was more than a year. There had to be more than 100 articles. Mm-hmm. So he did a lot of research, and he was a good writer too.
Did Harold, talking about writers, Harold Frederick was a very renowned, famed writer back in the, I forget what year it was.
He was born on South Street, the 400 block. The building still stands, but
The Damnation of Theron Ware.
Well, that was his most popular novel. But he started he was a reporter for the Utica Observer and became its editor. He was only 24, 25 years old. And then he went to the paper in Albany, and then the New York Times hired him as their foreign correspondent. Big job in those days. Yeah. And he was stationed in London. And he began writing novels, and they became popular. The most popular was The Damnation of Theron Ware. I think it was 1893 or 4. But for a while, it was the #1 bestseller on the bestseller list. The #1 at that time was The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. And The Damnation of Theron Ware replaced it as the #1 bestseller.
You mentioned that his house still stands on South Street. Whereabouts?
It was the 400 block. It's on the south side. Well, I would say probably between, Brinkerhoff and that area there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone lives there.
Is there a sign or anything that marks it?
No, there's no sign. Yeah. But he was, again, his novels were well read. You know.
There's only one newspaper writer, person that I can think of. I don't think there's any other that actually has a monument.
George Dunham.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the Parkway. Well, Dunham was editor of the press for the Daily Press for many, 30, 40 years. But he was also, you had so many immigrants coming in at the turn of the 20th century. And he was concerned that not many were becoming citizens. So he would give talks. He would go into the communities.
On citizenship?
On citizenship. You know, you got to get your citizenship papers. You're an American now. You got to become an American. And he actually wrote a little book, which we have at the History Center. I forget what it was called. But that was one of the main reasons they put up that monument. It's on the Parkway in Holland Ave.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a statue of him, but it's a
little
monument
bust.
with his name.
Yeah.
But the main
Is there a bust of him? I
right,
think
yeah. And the main reason is because the work he did convincing a lot of the immigrants to become citizens.
Yeah.
But also, he was a great newspaper man, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And other great newspaper people, the ones that just come to my mind, Frank, Gill Smith.
Well, Gill Smith, he hired me at the...
Hired me too?
Yeah, he hired me at the OD. He was managing editor of the OD when we were there, and then later, when Mason Taylor retired, he became executive editor. But when he was managing editor, he was very involved in APME, the Associated Press Managing Editors Association. Very influential. Top editors from all over the country belonged to that. And he was very involved in that. He worked his way up in the 1970s, became president. I mean, quite an honor, for a Utican. And I remember the meeting where he was going to be installed as president was in Honolulu, was in Hawaii. And naturally, we wanted to, and the main speaker, by the way, was Spiro Agnew, Vice President Spiro Agnew. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was working at the OD as city editor. It was on a Saturday morning, and we were waiting for the Associated Press to send us a photo of Gill Smith from Utica to installed as president. We got it like about 10 minutes before deadline. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he, in the newspaper business, he was really, really well known. Yeah.
There's a lot of other names. We'll talk about some of those names when we come back. Frank Tomato's our guest. We're talking about local newspapers and local newspaper people. Short break, right back.